Hello, we start today our fourth webinar. This is the last one of the four-part series of webinars, which are dedicated to introduction to ISO Technical Committee 68 Financial Services. So we made these webinars predominantly for Ukrainian audience. Ukraine introduced new standards. Last year it was a decision taken just to get rid of the old standards that we had a legacy standards from the Soviet era, but now we are switching to European and international standards. All standards, not only in financial services but everywhere. And that is why I would like to thank you very much to the management, to the leaders of the ISO TC68 who kindly agreed to make this presentation, really to make people understand what ISO TC68 is all about, what are perspectives of standardization in financial services, and how Ukrainian community can join this international standardization process. We think also that this will be interesting not only for Ukrainian audience, also for others as well. So with this in mind, I would like to present you Lauren Jones. And Lauren Jones, she is the head of the subcommittee 2, which is security. So with this in mind, I would like to introduce
Hi, thanks,
Lauren.
Yuri.
Yeah.
And good afternoon and dobro hodnia to all of you listening. And thanks all for taking the time out of your schedules to listen to us and my colleagues on the SD2 side, who will introduce you to all of the work that we've been doing over a number of years. So as Yuri mentioned, I'm Lauren Jones. I am chair-elect of ISO TC68 SE2. Chair-elect essentially means that I have been nominated to take over from the current chair, who is Kim Wagner. Unfortunately, he is West Coast of the United States, so slightly early for him. So I'll be taking over for him today to describe SE2 to you. I'll be formally taking over the chair role later on this year when Kim steps out of his long tenure running very successfully SE2 to date. So I already understand, as you mentioned, you've had a number of webinars on some of the other subcommittees and TC68 itself. So you should already have quite a good and broad overview of the TC68 landscape. So this webinar will focus solely on subcommittee 2, which is focused on security for financial services. So as you can see in the diagram, SE2 spans the entirety of TC68 as a horizontal subject area, as security is pivotal to all areas of financial services, not just one silo. So we look at security across the piece, both at a TC68 level, but also within each of the individual subcommittees on reference data and also on information exchange, where we will provide support and input into the standards initiatives of those subcommittees as they relate to security. As you can see in the box at the bottom in green, we focus on very traditional areas of security, such as public key infrastructure, encryption, biometrics, but also increasingly newer technologies, which we'll come on to shortly, such as APIs or application programming interfaces, QR codes, and digital currencies. So we span quite a lot of different standardization initiatives or requirements as they are needed by the financial services industry. We also work heavily with other ISO committees that look at security in other business domains outside of financial services. So there are quite a number of standards already in the SE2 portfolio, some that are exceptionally crucial for the smooth functioning of the financial ecosystem. So some on there you will most likely recognize, particularly those around PIN. So PIN management for card schemes and card issuers, secure cryptography, which is used by point of sale terminals across the world, and of course biometrics They're also heavily used. There are a number of standards in the ISO SE2 portfolio that are more technical reports. So they may be in areas that are not quite ready to be formal international standards, but act as guidance to the community on how to take the next step forward. So we see those particularly around triple DEA and also around customer identification techniques. This might be where the market is not quite mature enough to formally standardize, or it might be where there has been difficulty in achieving consensus on an international standard, but there is still value in publishing the work that the working group has potentially been working on. So we have quite an extensive range of standards within SE2. And we have some these are the ones that are published, and we also have some in the pipeline at the moment that are in the developmental phases. So SC2 has the Secretariat under the British Standards Institute. So the UK is responsible for the operation of SC2. As you will have noticed in TC68, the Secretariat is the US, and the other subcommittees are run by France and Switzerland. So there is a good breadth of expertise and geographical coverage in the management of various subcommittees under TC68. That is also extended even broader as we get into the working group level. So we have 17 published ISO standards that are under the responsibility of SC2. We have an additional 8 that are in the developmental phases within some of the working groups. We have 22 participating members. So it's a good number of participants in the SC2 ecosystem, with an additional 22 observing. And I'm sure as part of the TC68 webinar, it was described to you the difference between participating and observing members. The observing members still have a vital role to play, although not necessarily taking a direct role in the influence and creation of the standard itself. On the right-hand side, you'll see the number of working groups that we have within SC2. My colleagues who will speak after me will talk in detail about the content and the topics and the trajectory of work within each of those working groups. But suffices to say, we are kept very, very busy with the content of these and ensuring successful publication of standards that will provide benefit to the worldwide financial services community. 8 is focused primarily on public key infrastructure, 11 on encryption, 13 is much broader, so it's security and retail banking. So it has a number of standards that is vital for the retail banking sector, and my colleague Ed will talk more in detail about that. But it's looking at also newer and emerging technologies such as digital currency. WG16 focuses much more on third-party payment providers and ensuring that those fintechs have a secure way of accessing the ecosystem. 17 is focused on digital currencies, 18 on identification and authentication, and 19 on QR codes or code scanning payments more generally. So SC2 also has a number of liaisons with, really integral organizations that don't sit within the kind of country domain. So they're not representing a country, but representing an organization that has a significant interest in the security space. So the European Payments Council being a key one in Europe, responsible for the European payment schemes. They obviously have a very clear interest in security standards at an ISO level. Also, organizations such as MasterCard, SWIFT and Visa are also very active in that space. Additionally, we have other liaisons with other standardization bodies, particularly ETSI, who focus on standardization in Europe for the telco industry. So we ensure that we are heavily aligned with what they are developing as much as is possible. Within that liaison kind of infrastructure, if you like, we also have liaison relationships with other ISO committees, particularly in the JTC1 world, which is focused on much broader application of security techniques, so not specific to individual industry sectors. So we work closely with those to ensure that what we are developing leans on heavily the standards that they've developed. So, for example, biometrics. Biometrics is not just used for the financial services space. It's used by many other industries. So we want to make sure that what we're developing for financial services is not misaligned with what is happening elsewhere in the security community. So it's really, really important that SC2 and TC68 more generally stay on top of the trends that we're seeing in financial services and stay available and ready as a vehicle to support standardization when appropriate. A lot of these are maybe a little too immature to develop standards, international standards in that space. But we want to make sure that we're on top of these trends so that we can respond with relevant standards as appropriate. So particularly non-financial services trends around digital ID, SC2 looks at how we might support that from the financial services application of that. And the same is true for other types of non-fintech or non-financial services standards, how we might apply those external standards into our industry. One key area as well that we're looking at quite heavily at the moment across TC68, not just SE2, is around digital currency and particularly central bank digital currency. So there seems to be a growing requirement for standardization in this space. We've been active with the TC68 community to understand what security standards would be required, what might SE2 already have that is fit for purpose, that can be reused for digital currency versus what needs to be developed to support the growth of that sector. So SE2 is very active in horizon scanning the marketplace, listening to the P members and their requirements, and building that into the kind of pipeline of standards that SE2 needs to develop over the coming years. So just a couple of success stories for SE2. I think, standards are considered the kind of unsexy part of banking. It's the bit that is seen and not heard. But there are a couple of success stories that SE2 has had over the last few years, particularly around biometric authentication. So in 2008, the SE2 community published a security framework for using biometrics in the authentication of individuals. That standard is being heavily used now globally to support financial services applications and the safe and secure access to those applications by those information systems on behalf of end users. So there's a couple of Yuri, I think if we'll pass over to Tony now, who will be the first of the WG or working group leads, who will then talk more detailed about what each of the working groups is doing. And I think Tony will speak to WG8 in particular.
Okay, good, Lauren. Thank you very much for a very good presentation and introduction to the subcommittee 2, securities.
Tony Seymour. I am the convener of TC68, SC2, WG8, also the editor of a number of standards, ISO standards. My work background is in banking, risk, and financial consultancy. And I'm very pleased to be here to present WG8 to you today. So as you can see, WG8, it's entitled, and its main work is on public key infrastructure management for financial services activities. So the contents of the presentation are shown here. So there's just three very basic headings. We'll be looking at the WG8 background. We'll be looking at the current standards that WG8 has developed in the last few years and the ones we're looking at in the future. And as I said, and then we'll be looking at future work and ideas that PKI will need to be kept up to date in the modern financial arena. Okay, so WG8 background. So Working Group 8 of Subcommittee 2 of TC68 is concerned with standardizing aspects of public key technology, primarily for the use and purposes of the financial industry. So public key infrastructure defines the foundation for most modern security systems and provides confidentiality, integrity, authenticity, and non-repudiation. It relies on public key cryptography, a universally accepted asymmetric technology that enables entities to securely communicate using an insecure transport or media, reliably linking the data to the signatory and protecting the integrity of the data while proving guarantees about the existence of the data at the time of the signature creation. WG8 has initially profiled the X509 certificate and CRL structures to the particular needs of the finance industry and is currently ensuring that the finance industry is aware of potential changes to PKI resulting from, amongst others, blockchain and distributed ledger technology and quantum cryptography. But more of that later. So now looking at current standards, WG8 has been working on PKI standards for a number of years, and over the years a number of PKI standards have been developed and updated both in SC2 and in other ISO committees, including SC27. Current PKI standard is in WG8 is ISO 21188. I'm really sorry about all these numbers, but that's inevitable with ISO standards. So ISO 21188, Public Key Infrastructure Financial Services, Practices and Policy Framework. This standard was published by ISO in April 2018. The previous standard was ISO 15782, and this was a two-part standard, certificate management for financial services, public key certificates. This was published in 2009, and the standard was extensively used in the production of 21188. ISO 21188 sets out a framework of requirements to manage a PKI through certificate policies and certification practice statements, and to enable the use of public key certificates and it is intended to help implementers to define PKI practices that can support multiple certificate policies that include the use of digital signatures, remote authentication, key exchange, and data encryption. ISO 21188 is due for a 5-year review, and a systematic review ballot for ISO opened on 15th of April 2023 and ends on 2nd of September 2023. The ballot is with TC68 national bodies in order to determine the way forward for the standard. An option paper has been produced describing the various scenarios for the revision of the standard. In addition, following a request for a generic version of PKI and discussions between committees at ISO, SC27 utilised 21188 as the basis for the production of a generic version of a PKI standard that was known as ISO 27099. I was a co-editor of this work, and this was published as an ISO standard in June 2022. A further standard that we've been working on is known as ISO TR 24374. That's a technical report entitled Security Information for PKI in Blockchain and DOT Implementations. Again, I was the editor, and this was published in April 2023. This document describes the management of cryptographic keys in a blockchain or distributed system used in the financial sector. And the objective of this document is to consider the impact of different types of key management processes that are required for PKI implementations in blockchain and DOT projects. Okay, now we're on to future work. As mentioned previously, ISO 21188 is in a 5-year review ballot, which closes September 2023. In addition, I have identified a number of options for the revision of this standard, including no change, updating to include the significant changes from 27099, replacing it totally with 27099, or the development of a new standard. And the way forward will be determined following the end of the ballot in September. A second major topic that we're looking at for future work is post-quantum cryptography, known as PQC. And I'm going to call it PQC from now on because it's a bit of a mouthful. WG8 has been keeping a watching brief on PQC and the impact of post-quantum cryptography in financial services relating to PKI. PQC refers to cryptographic algorithms and protocols that are designed to be resistant against attacks by quantum computers. As quantum computers continue to advance, they pose a potential threat to traditional cryptographic algorithms such as RSA and ECC, which are widely used in financial services and other industries to ensure the security and integrity of sensitive data. Financial services rely heavily on cryptography to secure transactions, protect customer data, and ensure the integrity of financial systems. Therefore, the development and adoption of post-quantum cryptography in financial services is of critical importance to maintain security in the face of quantum computing advancements. There are a number of key points regarding PQC and PKI in financial services. However, that's for another presentation. We don't have time for that today. Also, WG8 is involved in other groups outside ISO, where changes to PKI are being discussed. And as Laura mentioned, there's a number of worldwide organizations involved in various aspects of cryptography and security. And relating to PKI, these include ANSI X9F5, the CA Browser Forum, the PKI Consortium, and ETSI. I think that's all I have for today. So I would like to thank you for your attention. I hope you found this of use, and I hope you all enjoyed the tennis yesterday as well. And I'm sure any questions you can put through Yuri, and we will try and answer them later on.
Okay, Tony. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the very interesting information, especially we know what we are waiting with coming of quantum computers. So how we have to be prepared for that. So thank you very much, Tony.
Hello. All right. So I'm here to really talk about two committees. The first is WG11. The second is WG13, which the convener for WG13 is Kim Wagner, and he's not able to join, as noted by Lauren earlier. So, but I'll start with WG11, encryption algorithms used in banking applications. So this is a group with a fairly long history, and I joined in 2019 and took over as convener in 2020. So my history with the group is not nearly as long as the storied history of this committee. So this committee studies and promotes cryptographic algorithms for use in banking and related financial services. There are several ISO committees that look at cryptographic algorithms. The main standard that covers cryptographic algorithms comes out of SC27, if I remember correctly, and that is 18033. Not all of the algorithms that are in that document are suitable or necessary to be used in financial services, where for interoperability reasons and for just saving expense at vendors and issuers and other participants in the payment ecosystem, it makes sense to just say, there's all these algorithms proposed by academia. Some of these are suitable for standardization, and so you have 18033. However, let's narrow the focus and scope down to what makes sense. So in WG11, when we're looking at the array of algorithms available from the world of the wider world of standard cryptography, we say not just is this a standardized algorithm now, but do we need to kind of incur the expense of adding this to the list of supported algorithms for all the people impacted by the standards that we promote and publish. So the meetings of this committee are usually face-to-face / online. They're both. It's about a half day, 3 times a year. The group size is 10 to 15. When we have an active document in place, we'll meet more often than this. There are, quite a number of different committees that and the meeting frequency and format are as varied as that many groups would suggest. And so, some groups meet an hour a month. Some groups meet for a week, 3 times a year or more, face to face. And there are many different meeting styles in between. And so this meeting style of half a day, 3 times a year is not all that strange. It's focused on the amount of work in front of the committee for a field that doesn't change that often. Given that, the committee is actually fairly active. The 20038 standard that is first under the current standards list, this is key wrap using AES. So if you're focused on key blocks and how keys are represented in applications, there are requirements from PCI, the Payment Card Industry Securities Standards Committee, on using key blocks that you might be aware of. ISO 20038 is one of the standards referred to by that body, although for international use cases, this standard focuses on key wrap using AES. There's no TDES key wrapping in this standard, although TDES keys may be carried in the key blocks described in 20038. Only the AES key wrapping method is used. And that's not to say payment network participants around the world do not use TDES keys for key wrapping. The standard was created and published in 2017, focused on where people should go in the future, prescriptive in nature, if you will. And so that's limited to the AES key wrapping method. The other standard there is actually ISO TR 19038 from 2005, triple DES modes of operation, and that standard has not been updated in quite a long time and might be considered just a historical document. The TR 14742 recommendations on cryptographic algorithms and their use. This is the narrower focus document where you take the 18033 and say which of these cryptographic algorithms should we consider for financial services use cases, and what additional requirements around their use and security parameters should be discussed in that framework of use cases. So 14742 is that document, and it's a technical report at the moment, which the difference between a technical report and a standard is something I won't go into, but that's easily researched, if you will, on the ISO website. The recent and future work concerns those two standards that are active. 20038, this is in progress with hoped for publish in the 2024 timeframe. And I say hoped for because for something in progress, you always hope you will hit the dates, and that may or may not be reflected in reality. As noted above, this is an ISO version of what is now a standard called X9.143 and focused on AES key wrap. So I'll back up a little bit. Historically, ISO 20038 2017 was based on a document called X9 TR31. And it was referring to the 2010 version of that technical report, if you will. And the x9.org standards body is from the United States. There's actually a lot of interwork between this ISO committee, WG11, and the US standards body, X9F1 is the cryptographic algorithms group, and also X9F6, which is more aligned with WG13. But the 20038 corresponds to TR31, X9 TR31, which came from X9F6, the subcommittee being X9F6. And so you see there the kind of crossover between the two standards groups on each side. So 20038 is an adoption of the standardized version of TR31, which is called X9143, first published in 2021. So the other piece of work is TS 14742, and that's been in progress for a while. It's got a couple years left to go, and that's an update to the recommendations for algorithms and methods. TS is opposed to TR, the technical specification, TS, again, not an international standard. It's a bit more formal than a technical report or a TR, but not quite up at the, it's got more flexibility than an international standard does. And so that's why that will be a TS 14742. In progress, 2025, hoped for publish date. And so that's WG11. And if we could go to the next slide. So WG13, security and retail banking, focused on security in many applications and interoperability of applications in the financial services space. So if you go to the next slide. The background here, again, the convener is Kim Wagner. Another group with a multi-decade history going back definitely to the 1990s, if not further. And if you look at the standards on the ISO website and try to determine the history, it actually cuts off because ISO itself has switched standards maintenance tooling over the years. And so I'm not I'm sure I could do a bit more research and see how far back it goes, but it definitely goes back to the 1990s. So this group is, again, 10 to 15 active participants in each meeting. They meet in person 1 week, 3 times a year. In person for a week, 3 times a year, focused on secure devices, key management, and PIN security. So current standards, ISO 9564, which is published in 5 parts, and that's considering personal identification number management and security. ISO 11568, which was recently published as a combined document. It's multiple parts historically, and that was combined into one document and published just this year, 2023. ISO 13491. It looks like the 9s were not maintained in the transition from this slide from PowerPoint to the Acrobat format. So I apologize for that, but you'll see kind of some spaces here, and I'll fill in the 9s as we go. So that you can say, and so where that becomes material here is well above ISO 9564 and ISO 13491, and that's 2 parts defining and describing secure cryptographic devices. So there are multiple documents in this space that say how do you create a secure cryptographic device, whether that's a hardware security module or a payment point of interaction or something else that will accept a PIN, such as an encrypting PIN pad on an ATM, and a device that will encrypt that PIN securely and send it across the network. There are several standards in this space. There's PCI standards. There's the FIPS standard from the U.S. NIST, and there's of course common criteria. So again, there's a few standards in this space, and this is one of them. And this played a more important role previously before FIPS and PCI took the prominence that they have now. But it's still actually referenced in parts of the world and still used by quite a few people. So it still has relevance. And then there's 13492, which was published in 2019. ISO 16609, that's the requirements for message authentication using symmetric techniques. And then the last one there is ISO 19092. So there's actually 2 9s in the last one under current standards. And that was the biometrics security framework mentioned before. That one, by Lauren as 19092 2008. So that update in just recently published in 2023 is an important update to several parts of the standard, including framework and assumptions and the security models, and really is an update that a lot of people put a lot of work into over several years. Active international participation really around the globe to update that for currency. WG13 current and future work. ISO 9564 Part 1, PIN management basics. There's a lot of work in this to deal with issues for regular physical mail that impact PIN delivery, driving PIN delivery over open networks to be considered. There was actually so much work to do that even though this work item was proposed in 2021 and a lot of time was put in there, we ran out of time. And so the committee closed that work item and will start another one with an urgent focus to complete this work. The standard is badly needed in several parts of the world where people that ask for a payment card may get their payment card and the PIN at the same time because of issues with physical mail. And so this PIN delivery method is susceptible to increased fraud, right? Historically, there's a lot of effort put in to make sure your card and PIN arrive at different times through the mail, so that someone watching the mail can't scoop those out and map a PIN to a card and then use them fraudulently. Given the changes in physical mail, there needed to be a standards backing for PIN delivery over open networks, whether that's SMS or through a web interface, and so that update is in progress. The next one, ISO 9564 Part 5, which is in progress. That is PIN management using a 16-byte block cipher, and that includes PIN generation and verification. Then ISO 13491 Part 1, I'm skipping down a bit. That's in progress. The update there is focused on multi-tenancy for hardware security modules, HSMs, and will include a better lifecycle description. And that will, of course, impact also the 13491 Part 2, the secure cryptographic device checklists. Then ISO 16609 2022 was recently updated, and then 19092 counts under the recent work column as well. And so that's it from my side. I hope I didn't run over by too much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the very interesting presentation. So now we have a better idea of how potentially these algorithms will develop in the future, and also all these security approaches to cards and devices, and the plans of international standard organization in this area. So thank you very much for that interesting presentation. And then now we go next to Lorenzo. Yeah, aren't we? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Richard. Okay, Lorenzo.
Hello everybody. My name is Lorenzo Gaston. I'm representing the French banking and payments industry in different committees of ICTC 68, and I'm chairing working group 16, and I'm also the technical director of the Smart Payment Association, which is an organization of vendors of security products for the payments industry. So today I'm going to focus exclusively, of course, in what we are producing at the working group 16 level, and you have my details. If you need any further clarification from my side, please don't hesitate to contact me. If we move to the first slide, is working group 16, and this is really, we are producing the standards for one of the big trends that have been exposed by Laurin. Okay, it's about open banking. You know that open banking is a term which is quite large, so it's covering many different technologies and business models. But basically, in working group 16, we summarize this saying that open banking is about, again, standardizing the security, because it's a problem of security, basically, and privacy, of an entity, which is the third-party payment provider, that is more or less regulated as a role in different areas of the world. In Europe, they are regulated, but it's quite open. That provide payment services to end users, retailers, okay, by connecting, okay, to a bank, the payer of the bank, using an API in Europe, and providing payment details about the transaction and a proof of consent by the end user in order to agree on the payment account to be debited and consequently the beneficiary, which is a retailer, to be credited. If from a security point of view, that creates an obvious vulnerability is the fact that the third-party payment provider is an entity that is positioned between the banks and the end users, and as such is a point of possible attack. And we must make certain that we have an harmonized way to address this threat, meaning that vulnerabilities of the payment tracks and the payment circuits that are routed through third-party payment providers are properly protected and the risks are properly mitigated. And that's the reason why Working Group 16 was created, and I'm going to detail to you where we are and what we intend to produce in short. So we're trying to define technical standards. These technical standards are on security of internal to PPPs, and security also related to the interactions that the TPP establishes with their environment. I mean, with retailers, with the banks, and with third parties. It can be clearing and settlement facilities, AD management systems. The topic is that the main challenge is that open banking doesn't mean necessarily the same thing in different areas of the world for the same stakeholders. That's why we started from a top-to-down approach, and we spent some time trying to agree on a common terminology as well as in the common interfaces that the TPP must establish and secure, and then defining security objectives that are intended to protect the account. We are in an account-to-account context, and this payment is initiated by a third party, not by the bank directly, not by the retailer, not by the consumer, but by this third party. As a result, we managed to publish a first standard in the area. It was 23195, which has been, let's say, the seed or the source for other standards that and technical specifications that we are now working on. And there are a couple of them. The first new work item that followed the publication of our ISO standard was 1946. This is a technical specification. The technical specification, as was explained, recognizes the fact that maybe the technology or practices are not mature enough or are really so much in the competition domain that it's difficult to go for an ISO standard right now from the very beginning. And we prefer, from the ISO perspective, to wait a little bit to produce a technical specification first, which is currently the state of the art and the strong recommendations for the security, in that case, the security framework for the information systems. And in a second step, maybe in 4 or 5 years time, when again the technical specification will be revised, then we can update this according to the industry practices and the background that we are going to obtain in TPP activity in the coming years, and then leverage the technical standard specification to an international standard. So we are defining security objectives and promoting security practices and security recommendations, and we call the security framework that will help third-party payment providers to fulfill with the security objectives that are set out in ISO 23195. So this is really a complementary standard that explains and comes into more details in how a TPP can achieve the objectives that were set out in our first ISO standard. And then there is a second new work item that has been approved recently. We are already working at a working draft, which is really more internal. It's about security internal controls, practices, and processes that enable or harmonize the third-party payment services, okay, to really comply again with the objectives set out in the first standard. So if I can summarize, the guidelines for security framework is about how the TPP, okay, makes certain, okay, that the interfaces with the other partners are secure, and the security controls and implementation guidance is about internal processes of the third-party payment provider itself. If we move to the next and final slide, just to explain what we are producing now. So as I mentioned, we are in the drafting process. So we are working really internal to the working group 16. This new proposal was submitted by the Korean standards body, and our objective is to meet the deadline of the 23rd of February next year to produce a first document that can be balloted as a committee draft. Okay? So this is one end, and the other hand is that we come at the working group level to the end in the drafting process for the technical specifications. We have resolved the process of resolving these comments, and we intend to release the technical specification by the end of 2023. Okay? In the midterm, lack of other newer guidance that probably will come up soon, especially taking into account that there is significant regulatory evolutions in regions of the world like the European Union. We are going to revise 23195, okay, to take into account these new legal requirements, and also it will be the opportunity for this aforementioned evolution of the technical specifications to a final ISO standard. That's all for now. Thank you for your time.
Okay, Lorenzo. Yeah, thank you, thank you very much for the very interesting presentation. Your work is very important. It's very important for the open banking. So hopefully, so people will be soon able to access all their banking accounts around the world with the help of your work, what you are doing with the help of special algorithms allowing payment service providers to connect to banks. Yeah. So thank you, and we have next Edward Scheid. Yeah.
Hello. Again, I'm Ed Scheit, and I'm the convener of Working Group 17. My involvement has included, in addition to the ISO, which we are speaking about today, references with ITU and ANSI. So, next slide, please. The standard itself that has gone through the ISO ballot stage and is in the publication stage now, it's got a history of about 4 years, roughly meeting twice a month with some changes as time goes for additional allocation of time. We had a group of around 15 people, and that varied, sometimes smaller groups met. The focus of Working Group 17 is really on one standard, and the current standard is Technical Standard 23526, Security Aspects for Digital Currency. And basically what that includes is security aspects, talking various ways of looking at security for CBDCs, or central bank digital currencies. And of course, the focus there would be digital currencies. So this is looking to the future type of standard. Next slide, please. The early stages, which again would be 4 years or more ago. And if you are familiar with the discussion on central bank digital currencies, you'll find that it has been rather broad in discussions. The purpose of the Working Group 17 was the development of a set of technical standards, or a standard result, to manage the security of life cycle of any form of digital currency, either private or issued by a central bank, since the subject covered more than just a single type of, potentially a single type of banking introduction. Due to the uncertainty in terms of the legal frameworks, and there was a lot of discussion there by various international entries, largely regional, covering the operation of digital currencies. A decision was made to publish a technical spec instead of an ISO standard. The technical standard sets out high-level security requirements, enabling a diversity of implementations. The approach is consistent with the present very heterogeneous market for any kind of digital asset that can be used to pay for payment. There are many benefits of digital currency, and CBDC include faster and more secure payments, cheaper international transfers, the 24/7 access, support for the unbanked, and more efficient instant government payments. But there also comes with it certain disadvantages that have surfaced over the years. Too many options, digital currencies being created across different blockchains, steep learning curve for digital currencies to be more widely adapted, slow progress, and expensive transactions. And you notice there are some new words in the vernacular. Blockchain surface as a new word, and there are many others that are included in the discussion of CBDCs. Looking at the future for TS 23526, upon the publication, or the final ISO publication, the intent was for the working group to again look at the market and to determine if we can at the time advance to an international standard. The objective has always been an international standard, but we saw the complexity and the comments that I made earlier appeared, and it was better to take a technical standard to begin with, and then with the objective to eventually move to an international standard. Focus will be needed for future legal security frameworks on digital currencies. So there's several frameworks, security frameworks, that are discussed in the ISO 23526, and there the intent was to use those frameworks, or a framework, as a guideline to pursue a business case or a digital currency security that could be implemented as such. There's using, we've heard already quite a bit about cryptography, and this standard also uses it, references cryptography. So in the context of moving forward, other things that had been talked about is post-quantum more newer discussions in that particular subject, which would be added to additional security protocols that could be related to the financial market. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a very interesting presentation about the developments in security. Actually, I have a question, Edward. Maybe you can answer that question. So, what's from your point of view? What is the impact of the security on the speed of blockchain? Because we know that there is with the blockchain we still have some issues with the speed and also the numbers of wallets which can blockchain handle. So if we just put on top some securities aspects, so doesn't it mean that it will be more slower, blockchains would be more slower, or just vice versa? So it's a general question.
Well, you're posing a question that actually is taking account of acceptance and what are we looking at for is the actual implementation. So the implementation question, although there is that dependency, Yuri, which is what you're talking about, we'll be looking at what, in the case of blockchain, in the case of other implementations, what's the trust model that's needed. Then from that type of perspective, you develop the security. Now, that all leads to where you are in your question. How do we implement that? And your implementation dependency is on the computing or your processing capabilities. Now, there's the danger of saying, well, we relax the security profile to accommodate the actual implementation. And there's a danger to that, as you can probably gather. So we always are weighing that. This particular subject that you have brought up is not new. It's many, many years and many implementations have gone through the question of, well, how much security is really relevant when it impacts my performance. That's a generalized response.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we have also, do we have any questions? Maybe Lauren, maybe you can wrap up today's meeting here, and you can say something just in general about the direction of your subcommittee is going.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Yuri, and thanks again for everyone listening. We did have one last working group to go through, but I think I'm conscious of time, so we can share the slides, I think, post the event. And if there are any additional questions, obviously you can reach out to Yuri or us directly, and we can help to answer those. I think, to leave you all with a couple of thoughts, I think, SC2, and you've heard from a number of the working group conveners, has been around for a considerable period of time, since before the 90s, before the advent of all of this new technology that is coming to the fore, is being used by consumers and businesses and banks and the wider economy of citizens. So it's really important that SC2 stays at the forefront of these developments and stands ready as a vehicle to support the industry and support economies in driving the secure use of these technologies as they start to be implemented in the wild. A lot of the technology we're discussing is still exceptionally new. We haven't even touched on things like AI. But there are obviously a number of security elements to that we will need to start to unpack and understand how much of that can actually be standardized. So, I hope that you all from the Ukrainian community remain involved and interested in what we're doing. And we would like to, keep you updated as required. And Yuri, you'll act through us and the TC68 wider leadership team to help support as much as we can.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much for a great presentation. Thank you very much for your work you are doing in general. And of course, yeah, for Ukraine, we have right now difficult times. But still, I think the only one way just out of the difficult times is just to working together and to communicate. And of course, the standards plays very prominent and very good role for the people in communication, in the cooperation. So just having standards, we are able to work together with good people.
Exactly. And standards and common ways of working are always good.
And move forward. Yeah, just and make progress of humanity a reality. Just. So thank you very much. Thank you, Lauren, for your presentations today. Thank you very much for representatives of Subcommittee 2, Security of Technical Committee 68, Financial Services of International Standards Organization. And yes, we are finished. This is our last webinar in series. I hope that we will be doing more webinars and we'll provide more information. Of course, this series was dedicated to especially for Ukrainian community. When we change, to this international standards right now, we have to go in one go. In this year, we have to change all our standards, just to be compliant with the European standards, European and international standards. So it's a lot of work, and of course we'll work together. So thank you very much. Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Yuri. Thanks for organizing.
Yeah, thank you. And yes, I would like to say thank you very much to Lauren Jones, who is the chair of the Security Subcommittee of TC68, and also we had today with us Tony Seymour and Richard Kisley, Edward Scheid, Lorenzo Gaston Guerrao, and also I would like to say many thanks to Jim Northey, who is the chair and is the leader of the Technical Committee 68, and who was actually the driving force to organize this series of webinars. So thank you very much, Jim. And also these webinars wouldn't be possible with many people who help us to provide this information to the broad audience. And this is Sarah Horsfeld and of course Paul D'Amico, who spent a lot of time shaping these webinars. So thank you very much. And also I would like to say thank you very much to everybody who joined us today, to the whole Ukrainian community. We have pretty hard time, but still you're doing great job. We have just still our financial system intact. You are helping our army, our Ukrainian army, Ukrainian military, and I know with the help of the whole world, so we will win, and there will be peace, and everything will be all right. Thank you very much once more. So please stay in touch. Thank you. Bye bye.